Hey everyone, and welcome to today's EISA workshop. This is the third workshop for 2026, and it's actually the last one. My name is Buseleza Mukano. I'm the manager that's responsible for EISA. Please take note of the following. This session is 3 hours. It's starting now at 9 until 12 o'clock. Please stay until the end of this workshop to get all the information firsthand, especially when it comes to remote examination. You are able to ask questions throughout using the Q&A function on Teams, YouTube, and Facebook, but we'll also have a session at the end where you are able to go through all the questions. You will be requested to complete a survey to confirm your attendance and also to rate the workshop. And the presentation will be made available on the SAPC website. In terms of the program of the day, as I said, my name is Buseleza Mukano, so that's me. The first part is done of the workshop, and then we'll then focus on the format and content of the examination and assessment, preparing for the calculation question and example, and that will be done by our facilitator, Dr. Fogati, and then we'll have a 10-minute break. Then we'll move on to the general section and also the example of such question, and Mr. Ina van Niekerk will take us through that section. And then we will look at the remote examination and then look at all the question and answers. In terms of the remote examination, it's important to focus because that's where most people have a problem during the examination. So take note and also test your equipment before the exam. Hand over to Dr. Fogati to start with the format and content of the examination or assessment. Over to you, Dr. Fogati.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's my pleasure to be with you. I am just switching my camera on for a moment so that you can see it's a human talking to you and not an AI bot. And I will share my screen momentarily. Right, so as you have heard, that this is the workshop for the Pharmacist Assistant Basic External Integrated Summative Assessment, and I'm going to go through the structure of the assessment with you, as well as the workshop for the calculation section. Right, so I'm going to look at the format and content of the exam, and then I'm going to do the preparation for calculation questions. I will hand over once we've been through all the examples of the calculation questions after the break to my colleague, who will take you through the general questions and the example of the general questions. And then, as Ms. Mohano has said, she will take you through the online exam process. So let's look at the format of the examination. And if you're unsure if you are in the right meeting, we are looking at the external integrated summative assessment for Pharmacist Assistants Basic. So hopefully you know now that you're in the right meeting. And let's look at the breakdown of the exam. The exam itself is an open book online examination, and you will have access to resources on the examination platform. In addition, you will have a guideline telling you what resources you should be, and we will go through some of the resources that you should be using in preparation for the examination. Just because it's an open book exam doesn't mean that you don't need to prepare. You still need to be prepared. You still need to go through your work and make sure that you understand the work so that when you come into the exam, you can write the exam without having to refer to references. However, there are references there if you do need to check on a few things. There are 100 multiple choice questions in the exam, and you are required to achieve a pass mark of 50%. Very importantly, we do not employ negative marking. And so it's we encourage you to answer all of the questions. Even if you're not sure, try and answer the question as best you can and to the best of your knowledge. The exam time is 3 hours and 30 minutes in total. The exam is split into 2 sections. The one is a calculation section. There are 16 questions, or 16% of the exam is made up of these calculation questions, and you are required to achieve 50% for that section. So 50% of your 16 multiple choice questions, you have to get 8 of the calculations correct to pass the exam. Even if you pass the exam overall, but you get less than 8 out of 16 for your calculation questions, you won't pass. Similarly, the general section is 84 multiple choice questions, and you are also required to achieve 50% for that section. The exam covers 4 exit level outcomes, which you should be familiar with if you've done your qualification quite recently, and maybe if you did your qualification a little while ago, you need to refresh your memory. So there are 4 main exit level outcomes, and we're going to go through each one, and I will show you the breakdown of the exam for each of those exit level outcomes. The first one is to apply basic scientific knowledge to provide technical support in delivering pharmaceutical services. In this section, there are a lot of general questions, and there are also a few calculations, and this is your basic sciences, dosage forms. We look at a little bit of legislation, scope of practice in this particular section. Then in exit level 2, it's provide technical support for the receiving, storing, picking, packing, and distributing of orders, to perform stock counts and participate in stock taking in compliance with GMP, GWDP, and GPP requirements. If we have to summarize ELO2 into a word or two, we would say that it is stock and stock management. Then exit level outcome 3 is to provide technical support for the manufacture, packaging, and repackaging of non-sterile medicines and scheduled substances in compliance with GMP guidelines under the supervision of a pharmacist. Again, if I had to just pull out a word that maybe captures ELO3, maybe it would be manufacturing. So we've got ELO1, which is our basic foundational knowledge. Legislation is covered in there, some calculations, some basic calculations. ELO2 is stock. ELO3 is manufacture. And so ELO4 brings us to compounding, and it's to provide technical support for the compounding, manipulation, and preparation of non-sterile medicines and scheduled substances, also known as extemporaneous compounding. And this is done in compliance with standards as described in your Good Pharmacy Practice Rules and Good Manufacturing Guidelines, all under the supervision of a pharmacist. So you will note that these ELOs are all within the scope of practice of a pharmacist assistant basic. The ELOs don't cover work that is not within the scope, in your scope of practice as a basic assistant. This is the breakdown of questions. You will see that the bulk of the questions, 40% of the questions, and of course, if the exam is out of 100, 40% means that there are 40 questions on the general scientific knowledge, scope of practice, and other legislation. And then the second biggest section is ELO2 with 25 questions. And we said that that one was stock, 15% on manufacture, and 20% on compounding. So here's some of the topics that are covered under ELO1, your basic scientific knowledge and legislation. Well, scope of practice, relevant to you as a pharmacist assistant basic. Ethical and professional conduct, also relevant to your scope of practice. And then thirdly, basic pharmaceutical terms and concepts. And within your scope of practice, it's non-sterile drug delivery systems. The focus is on non-sterile, not on sterile. And then basic scientific principles and basic scientific calculations. And today we will go through some examples of the types of calculation and the level of calculation you are expected to be able to perform. Right, then the second exit level outcome, the summary word was stock or stock management. Yeah, you need to know how to conduct distribution and control of stock, pick, pack, and secure orders for medicines or scheduled substances, complete documents and maintain records, and participate in stock counts. And all of these are done in accordance with standard operating procedures, as well as good pharmacy practice and good wholesale and distribution practice and current good manufacturing practice. Then ELO 3, that is the manufacturing ELO. So applying your good pharmacy practice principles and legislative requirements in manufacturing. Again, the focus is on non-sterile medicines. Secondly, organizing and preparing your resources, materials, and equipment. Handling your materials, considering the environments and storage conditions, as well as transport and security. Participating in the manufacturing process, focus on non-sterile medicines, and then pack and repack medicines and scheduled substances, following your GMP ethical principles, relevant legislation, process documentation, standard operating procedures, all of which are authorized by the pharmacist. And also, what documentation are you able to complete the documentation and maintain the records, following good manufacturing guidelines. Again, just emphasizing that the questions are asked within your scope of practice. And then the final ELO, which is the compounding ELO, that is to apply principles of good pharmacy practice concerning the compounding of non-sterile medicines and substances. Compound a simple solution, suspension or semi-solid, according to a formula and in line with relevant standard operating procedures. Being able to complete records for those preparations, checking and cleaning your equipment, performing various housekeeping activities, and then finally operating a personal computer to generate documents and spreadsheets. So now you know what the makeup of the exam is, how many questions there are, which ELOs are covered in those exams. But in addition to having 100 MCQ questions split across those 4 exit level outcomes, questions are also asked at different levels. Some questions are asked at a knowledge and comprehension level. So you just know the question is a straightforward question that you would be able to find in a text or you would know. The second level of question is an application question where we might add a drug name or something where you have to apply the knowledge that you have to a situation. And then the third type or the third level of question is where you are required to do some kind of analysis and evaluate information to then be able to formulate your answer or to select the correct answer. And when we go through the questions just now, I will give you an example of this is a straightforward knowledge question, or this is a higher order question, which requires a little bit more of an analysis and evaluation to be able to come to an answer. So when you are getting ready or preparing for your exam, it's important that you are prepared so that you don't create additional anxiety for yourself. Make sure you know when the exam is, the date and the time, where you are going to write your exam. Remember, this is an online exam, and so where are you going to place yourself where your equipment is working, where you have sufficient quiet space. Make sure that you've planned that ahead of time, that you won't be disturbed during your exam. And when we explain to you how the proctoring system works or how the invigilation system works, you will see that you have to be alone in the space that you are writing your exam. And then also, what resources do you need? What resources are you allowed to bring into the exam? What resources are available on the exam platform? You are allowed to use a calculator for your calculation questions, so make sure you bring a calculator with you into the exam. So that's a resource that you would need. Bring a pen and paper in case you want to do the calculation, work out the calculation on a piece of paper next to you. Right, preparing. How can you prepare? Which references do you need, and how do you use those references? And we will talk a little bit more about references in the next few slides. And then for the actual exam, what do you need to bring, and how does the online exam work, as well as how long is the exam? So you need to pay careful attention in the second part of this workshop to make sure that you understand how the online exam system works. So here are some further tips. When you're preparing for the exam, you really need to use the latest reference material. Sometimes, legislation changes or practice changes over the last couple of years, particularly if you have done one of the old courses. Your materials that you used in those courses, you'll see there's another note here about course notes may be irrelevant. Check if the info is still valid. Your course notes might be outdated. The textbooks you used then might be outdated. So make sure you're using your latest reference materials to update yourself. And we'll show you just now where to find some resources on the Pharmacy Council website that are the latest legislation that you should be using as a reference. Check current events that are happening in the news, what's happening locally, what's happening globally. Is there an outbreak of cholera? The measles outbreak in some countries, for example. Just be aware of that. Be aware from a health perspective what is happening out in the world. And then familiarize yourself with the reference materials that are available to you during the exam. You don't want to access reference material for the very first time during the exam. You must use the reference material ahead of time, know how to use it, how to refer to an index, or refer to an index to be able to find information in the text. Don't come into the exam not having used a particular reference source, because it's going to cause you anxiety and get you flustered. So never use reference material that you've not used before. Also, learn from your work environment. There are standard operating procedures. Every pharmacy has to have standard operating procedures, a file of SOPs that you should be able to work through. And then also ask for assistance from your colleagues or supervisors. If you're working through something in your reference material and you don't understand, make use of your colleagues and supervisors to assist you, to explain to you what the work entails or what the meaning behind some of the material is that you are going through. Right, so for the calculation blueprint, we are focusing on 3 of the ELOs. Again, reminding you that ELO 1 in the blue is your general scientific basic calculation questions. Then ELO 2 is the stock section. So those calculation questions will be based on stock management. And then ELO 4 is your compounding questions, so calculations related to compounding. You can see 50% of the questions, and remember we said there's 16 questions, so 50% of the 16 is 8 questions, come from ELO 4, which is your compounding, and then the remainder of the questions from the other 2 ELOs. So yeah, again, is just giving you an idea of the types of questions you might be asked. So for basic scientific principles, you may be asked basic conversions, and then stock management, stock consumption, reconciliation calculations, the value of stock. And then in your compounding ELO, calculate the quantities of ingredients according to a formula. and reconciliation calculations in repackaging, also percentage, mass per volume, but we'll go through some of those in the examples. Here are some recommended textbooks for you to consult in preparing for the calculation section. Pharmaceutical calculations, calculations for pharmaceutical practice, and then pharmaceutical practice itself. It's quite time consuming to be paging through a textbook during the exam. And for calculations, you need to learn the principle. So these textbooks should be used in preparation for the assessment, not during the assessment. As I said, make sure you understand the principle. Don't try and memorize a calculation. And then when we talk about SI units, make sure you understand what SI units are. And particularly when we work with weight per volume or volume per volume or weight per weight, what does that mean? So a percentage weight per volume always means grams in 100 mils. And again, we'll do a few examples of that in the calculation workshop just now. Make sure you've got your scientific calculator and don't practice with one calculator and then use a different calculator in your exam, because that can also cause stress and confusion. Make sure your batteries are, they are fully functional. You don't want your calculator to run out of battery power while you are in an exam. Make sure you know the settings of your calculator. And then, as I mentioned earlier, make sure you have paper and pen with you so that you can do you write down and work out your calculation before you try and answer the question. When you are writing the calculations section, first read the question and determine which formula you should be using to answer the question. And then you've got your paper and pen next to you. Make sure that what you copy off of the screen onto your piece of paper are the correct figures. Sometimes that can, we know exactly how to do the calculation, but we make a silly mistake because instead of a 5, you wrote down an 8. And so now your whole calculation is incorrect just because you didn't transcribe. Transcribe means that what I saw on the screen and what I wrote down on my piece of paper must be the same. And if you make an error there, then of course your answer is going to be incorrect. And then if possible, in your mind, when you read the question, if you've practiced sufficiently for your calculations, you should be able to, in your mind, be thinking, I think the answer is around this amount. You estimate an answer, so that when you do your calculation and you get an answer that's completely different to what you estimated, maybe you made a mistake. And so you will go and double check your answer. Right, so if I told you that most students make an error with their conversions and that is why they get their calculations wrong, would you believe me? Have this as a reference source next to you so that you don't get confused when you need to convert between, particularly we work a lot with milligrams and grams. So if I'm going from milligrams to grams, must I multiply or must I divide? If I'm going from grams to milligrams, must I multiply or divide? So in this diagram, you can see that when we go from the very smallest unit, this is micrograms, through to kilograms, you divide each time. So if I want to convert something from micrograms to kilograms, my quantity, my decimal place gets bigger, my 0.0000. Okay, so I'm dividing. When I'm going from the smallest unit, I'm converting from micrograms to kilograms, I'm going to divide. But for each level, I divide by 1,000. So if I'm moving from micrograms, I'm converting from micrograms, 1 microgram to 1 milligram. sorry, I'm moving from 1 microgram and I want to convert it to milligrams, I must divide by 1,000. So 1 microgram is equal to 0.001 milligrams. It gets the small unit increases the number of decimal places as you move to the larger units. Likewise, if you're going from a large unit to a small unit, you're going to multiply. So 1 kilogram, I multiply by 1,000 if I want to know how many grams that is. So 1 kilogram, I multiply by 1,000 is the same as 1,000 grams. And 1 gram multiplied by 1,000 gives me 1,000 milligrams. And this is very important in calculations because in a question, the question might talk about grams, but in the answer, the question, it's asking for milligrams. So to get the correct answer, you may have to do a conversion. And sometimes you do the conversion before you do the, and sometimes you do the conversion after you've completed the calculation, depending on what the question is asking. Okay, so keep this as a reference source with you so that you don't have to, am I multiplying, am I dividing, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm stressed now. Keep it with you. So likewise, when we go from small liquid units to large liquid units, if I've got 1 microliter, or let's go with 1 milliliter, 1 milliliter is how many liters? 0.001 liters. Because I'm going from a small unit to a large unit. And if you think of a liter of milk, and you're taking 1 ml out of that liter of milk, how much is that? Okay, a ml is smaller than a liter. And so 1 ml in that milk is 0.001 liters. Okay, and if we go backwards, we go, I've got 1 liter. How many milliliters do I have? Well, I've got 1,000 milliliters in my 1 liter of milk. Okay, right, so it's important that you manage your time. You don't want to be running out of time in the exam. We have given approximately 2.6 minutes per question in the exam, which in total for your 16 multiple choice questions is 42 minutes. There is no negative marking. So if you do a calculation and maybe you're 1 decimal place out, rather answer the question that is closest to that decimal place so that you don't leave anything blank. Right, so that now takes us to our calculation examples. We will put the link for you into the chat so that you can access the link, or you can use your phone to do the QR code scan, and I will give you 15 minutes to answer the 10 questions on the examples, and we will go through each of those questions together. Okay, I'm just going to give it 4 more minutes. We've already got 120 responses, so it's going well. Okay, I'm going to continue. Right, so I'm just going to display the responses like this so that we can see the question and the responses that came up. When the screen does that, it means that someone else is submitting their response. Right, and then I'm going to work through the calculations with you on my writing pad, and you're going to just have to excuse my handwriting up front. Okay, so the first question is the simple conversion question. This is an example that I spoke through earlier. Just kind of advising you to keep the conversion tables with you so that you don't make mistakes. So let's just pull my Word document onto the screen. Okay, so the first question was a simple was for 8 grams converted to milligrams. So we've got a large unit, and we need to know how many of these small units fit into the large unit. So if you think of each of these little dots here that I'm putting in, I have to put all of these little dots in here. So I've got one large unit, and I have to fill it with smaller units. So that tells me that grams to milligrams, I've got to multiply, because I've got to go from a large unit, one big unit, into a lot of little units. And so that means that I have to multiply by 1,000. And so 8 grams is the same as 8,000 milligrams. Okay. Right, so question number 2. Most of you got that correct. 74% of you got that correct. Those of you that answered 0.008, I hope my little illustration will help you a little bit. And then those that answered, you will always have 3 decimal places, or you will have 3 additional zeros when you do conversions. Okay, so what does 25% mass per volume mean? This is typically actually a very much a knowledge question. You need to know what mass per volume means, and I've already given that to you in the earlier slides. And then it's just a little bit of application of that particular concept. So firstly, what is milligrams per mass per volume, sorry. What is mass per volume? And that is always gram per 100 mils. What is the 100? It's because it's percentage. And percentage is always out of 100. You can't get 1,000%. You can't get 150%. The maximum percent you can get for a test, for example, is 100. And so when we say percentage mass per volume, it's how much in 100. And when it's mass per volume, it's always grams. It's not milligrams. It's always grams. Okay, and this is where sometimes you get asked a question about grams, or you get asked a question about mass per volume. And so you do your calculation grams per 100 mils, but then the question asks you, what is the answer in milligrams? And then you would have to do a second step, which would be your conversion. Okay, so this question is straightforward. It's basically asking you, what is 25%? What does 25% mass per volume mean? And it's basically then 25 grams in 100 milliliters. Okay, so a bit of a knowledge question there. Let's clear this board. Okay, let's look at question number 3. Question number 3, how many medicine measures is 20 milliliters of cough syrup? Okay, now, what is a medicine measure? Well, hopefully you've learned that a medicine measure, one medicine measure is equal to 5 milliliters, right? So if the question is how many medicine measures are in 20 ml, well, 20 divided by 5 is equal to 4. And that is 4 medicine measures. The next question, what is 50% of 24? Okay, so that's quite a straightforward percentage question because, well, 50% is half of 100. And so I can just divide 24 by 2 because half of 24 will give me 50%. But how do you actually do that in a calculation? So many of you have got that correct. If you're unsure how to calculate it, 50% of 24. Now, if you go back to your school maths, you will hopefully remember, or you will find out when you go through your textbooks, that another way to write 50% is to write it as 50 over 100. Okay, that's when you write it as a fraction. We don't need to do it for this calculation, but do you know how to write 50% as a decimal place? To write it as a decimal, you would write it 0.5. So this is another way to practice converting from a percentage to a fraction or to a decimal place. Okay, so we're not interested in this one. We want to write it as a fraction. And also from school, if you say 50% of 24, of means let's multiply by 24, and you do your calculation, you will end up then with 50 times 24 divided by 100, which should hopefully give you 12. You could also, if you did use the decimal, because 50 divided by 100 is 0.5, times 24 will also give you 12. So it depends on how you visualize the calculation, will depend on how you respond. Right, so now question 5. Now this question, I'm not sure what your providers are teaching you, because I find that the students get this question wrong in every workshop. So I'm going to draw a picture for you, and hopefully that will help you visualize ratios differently. Okay, it's very important to read the whole question. If 30 milliliters of alcohol are added to 60 milliliters of water, what is the ratio of alcohol to total solution? Okay, to the total solution. So let's try and draw that in a picture. Question 5. Okay, I've got a beaker. Oh gosh, my beaker is a little bit wonky. Try again. Okay. I draw him again. Right, so here we have a beaker. And into that beaker, I add 30 milliliters of alcohol. And I also add 60 milliliters of water. So my beaker now has 30 mils of alcohol and 60 mils of water. So my total volume in my beaker is now 90 mils. My total solution is 90 mils. And the question is asking, what is the ratio of alcohol to the total? Not alcohol to water. My alcohol to water is I've got 1 part alcohol to 2 parts of water, but I have 1 part of alcohol to 3 parts of total solution. And so your answer for 5 is 1:3, because my total solution is 90 moles. "30 is to 90. Divide each side by 30. I've got 1:3. Right, next question is question 6. 50 containers of medicine are counted during a cycle count. Of the 50 containers, 5 are expired, 2 are short-dated, and 3 are damaged. Using the information given, how many containers of medicine can still be used? I can see that you are split 50-50 on this one. Again, this is a higher order question because there is the level of evaluation. You've got to evaluate the information before you apply the information. So if we look at our different types of medicines, we've got 50 containers, but then we've got different categories of medicine in terms of whether they are outdated or damaged. As far as expired medicine is concerned, you may not dispense expired medicine. Okay? Short-dated medicine can still be dispensed provided you're dispensing it within its date. So for this short-dated medicine, you can assume that you can still dispense it. And then 3 are damaged, and we cannot dispense damaged medicines. So using the information given, how many containers of medicine can still be used? Well, I can still use these 2 short-dated medicines. So the only ones that I can't use are the 5 expired and the 3 damaged. And so your answer should be 50 minus 8, which is 42. Again, we can look at it as a calculation. Okay, question 6, we had 50 containers. We had 5 that were expired, 3 that were damaged that I can't use. So I have to subtract these, but I can still use the 2 that were short dated. So I'm not going to include them. And so 50 minus 5 minus 3 is going to be 48. I mean, sorry, completely wrong. It's going to be 42. Okay, next question. Question 7. Person weighed 90 kilograms at his doctor's office. At his current visit, the patient lost 5% of his weight. How many kilograms has the patient lost? Okay, so now you're given a percentage. You need to work out what is 5% of 90. So again, if you read the question and you convert it just into a straightforward sentence, we say that we want to know what is 5% of 90, because he's lost 5% of his weight. And how do I write 5%? I write it as 5 over 100 times 90, which is then equal to 4.5. And if you write it as a decimal, it will be 0.05 times 90 equals 4.5 kilograms. Okay, most of you got that one correct, so I think we can move quickly to the next one. What is the total value of 15 containers of a medicine that has a cost per unit of 130 Rand? This is a straightforward application question. It's just asking you to multiply 15 containers at a cost of 130 Rand. What's the total cost? Well, it's 15 times 130, which gives you 1,950 Rand. Don't think I need to do that one for you. Question 9 is, during the packaging of a batch of medicine, 1,980 labels are used from 2,000 that were originally issued. What percentage of labels must be returned to the dispensary? You have to read the whole question here. I can see that 67 of you didn't read the whole question because you gave me just the difference between 2,000 and 1,980. So you've told me there are 20 labels left. The question is asking, what percentage of labels must be returned to the dispensary? So let's quickly look at that. Right. This is question 9. Question 9. We have 2,000. We had 2,000 labels, and we used 1,980, and that gave us 20 labels remaining. And so the question is asking percentage of labels is remaining or needs to be returned. So that is what percentage of the original number that were issued. And so we say 20 over 2,000, because it's the same as saying what percentage is 20 of 2,000. And so now we know how to do a percentage calculation. We say 20 divided by 2,000 times 100, because it's a percent is 100, and then we're going to get 1%. Okay, so those of you that read the whole question got that correct, but those of you that stopped too early, unfortunately, you got that incorrect. Okay, so what percentage of labels must be returned to the dispensary? And then the last question is what percent weight per volume, okay, will be obtained when 5 grams of chlorine is added to 500 milliliters of water. So we've got 5 grams of chlorine. That's already a percentage, and it's grams per mil. I can see that it's grams per mil. So I don't need to do any conversions, because weight per volume is grams per 100 mil. So yeah, I can see, okay, it's 5 grams and 500 mils. My units are correct. You always check your question. Do I need to change my units? In this case, no, because weight per volume is grams per 100 mil. And I've got grams here, and I've got mils here. So now I just want to know what is the percentage of the solution that is going to be obtained. Again, it becomes a percentage question. And so I've got 5 grams in 500 mils. What percentage is that? You do your calculation, and it will also come to 1%. And 56% of you got that correct. Good. Right, so let's go back to our presentation. I think that we have come to the point where we're going to have a quick break, so you can have a cup of coffee quickly, and we will be back, I think, in about 10 minutes. Sorry, maybe the office can just confirm the time of the break.
Yes, we'll be back at 20 past 10. Sorry about that.
Okay, 10 minutes to get a cup of coffee or tea or a drink, and then come and sit and for the next session. Thanks. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Morning. Welcome back to the second session where we will look at the general questions for the ISA. I'm Ina van die Kerk, and as Ms. Fogarty, I'm not an AI bot. So some of the important aspects that's already mentioned in the introduction part will be emphasized here. So once again, looking at the outlay of the exam, the general questions will cover all four exit level outcomes. The majority of the questions will come from ELO 1, that you remember has to do with knowledge of your definitions, legislation, scope of practice, and scientific principles. ELO 2 deals with stock management, ELO 3 with manufacturing, and ELO 4 with compounding. You will notice that EL1 and 2 comprises a large section of the general questions in the exam. Therefore, you will tend to concentrate more on these sections, but still do not forget the importance of your exit level outcomes 3 and 4. The general questions will come from everyday scenarios that you would come across in different pharmacy settings. The general questions will be testing whether you know the basics and can you apply the knowledge and the information. Being an open book exam, we have to look at the references that you can use and how to use it effectively during the exam and prevent it to be a hindrance or a futile, time-consuming exercise. We definitely sometimes need to use the references for the general questions just to verify our answers. The best approach to determine which references to use, we would look at the questions. We analyze every answer and determine the specific area. For example, is the question related to legislation, scope of practice? Is it a definition or the setting? Is it in manufacturing? To determine which references is then applicable. It's also important to know how to use the references. You are allowed to use books, physical or online, PDF copies. You may download physical copies. You may print those, or you can download and save on your PC or your laptop. Books may include also the Martindale, the SAMF, and MIMS. There are also other online references, for example, the EM guidance. It is very important that you access these references or resources before the exam and keep it in a way that you know how to access it during the exam. It is most important that you use references that are applicable to the South African setting. For example, if you access standard treatment guidelines for the UK or Australia, it may not be applicable to the South African setting and may lead you to an incorrect answer in the exam. This will also apply to your medicine list that are available in other countries, may not be available in South Africa. Equally important is to access references that are current with up-to-date information. Look for the latest version, for example, the GMP, the GPP, and the GWP. There are online PDF references that's provided through the examination site. There will be a tab. Make use of this option during the practice exam. Download these references during your practice exam. Save it to your laptop or computer. So on the day of the exam, you are already familiar with those documents. So let's start from the top once again. I stress the importance of current references. EM Guidance always has the latest versions on the guidelines for primary healthcare, pediatrics, and hospital care, and also the essential medicine list, and it is for our South African setting. If you have not yet logged onto the EM Guidance, if you have not yet logged onto the EM Guidance, you need to do that before the practice exam. There is so much information that you can access, but it does not tell you which document to use. It provides information on APIs, dosages, drug interactions, and general guidelines. Please remember, EM Guidance is not an AI-powered tool or a search engine that will give you the answers. You must know what information is available in each document in the EM guidance. So practice the use of the EM guidance beforehand. The PDFs of the good manufacturing and the good wholesale practices and the Medicines and Related Substances Act are available from the SAPRA website. Once again, make sure to access the latest updated versions on the SAPRA website. And the Consolidated Act may not include the latest regulations, and you will need to consult board notices. The Pharmacy Act and Good Pharmacy Practice PDF documents are available on the SAPC website, but it's also important to look at board notices published and informed you of the updates and changes to the Pharmacy and Medicine Act and the GPP. So although you have the GPP with ethical rules downloaded, I caution you to make sure of the latest updates to the GPP in the form of board notices. Thus, a hint, you need to go and build a repository or folder with these updated references or materials for easy access during the exam. I want to show you where to find the documents on the SAPC website, and you will see there's so much information available to your fingertips. This slide shows the public-facing landing page, so you do not need to log in to access publications. You will see there's those small orange circles at the right top of the page. And to access the publications, you need to click on the middle circle that looks like a little book. This will take you to everything that council published and uploaded on their website. The first tab is annual reports, and that is not needed for the exam. And also the last two tabs, rate cards and reports, you will not need for the exam. The legislation and the pharmacia tabs are important. Pharmacia are important in terms of it highlights changes that had been made to pharmacy practice, um, released on an annual basis. Open up these tabs, read through, and see what changes were made. So when you click on the legislation tab, you will find it opens up a list there on top. It lists the acts, regulations, rules, board notices, and proposed legislation. Of these, legislation is the most important tab. So the first tab, Act, when you click on it, it provides the Pharmacy Act document. The Regulations tab provides the regulations to the Pharmacy Act, such as so you will see there's a regulation to training. This provides regulation and includes training facilities. It includes the scope of trainees, the supervision of the trainees, And once again, you need to be familiar with these documents and how to use them. These documents are most likely um, that you will provide that your provider has used this to create their learning material. So if you click on um, the Rules tab, you will see that the Good Pharmacy Practice Manual and associated SAPC rules are also listed there. Um, but as I said, we expect that you um, are updated with the latest information. So the GPP, after it was published here on the site, a lot of new board notices were published. So after that publication of the manual, you must update your manual with those board notices. We expect an updated version of the GPP in the near future, but currently you need to do it yourself. For example, rules related to CPDs are new, education standards are new, and also the new board notice on pharmacy premises. The list here on the slides is probably now expanded on the website since these slides were compiled. So it's important to open the documents and make sure that you are familiar with the latest content. The examiners will never ask you what is in Board Notice 188 of 2019, but the examiners will test your knowledge on the content within that document. So that is important to take note of. So the tab on board notices deals with board notices on legislation and administrative aspects such as fees payable that changed every year, and guiding documents such as how to submit and compile CPD. The last tab deals with proposed legislation. These are documents published for comment and not yet legislation. And you will not be examined on these documents because they are still proposed law and that is still pending. Many questions in your exam might come from the webpage with this legislation. Remember, again, examiners will never ask what is standing in board notice X, I, or Z, but you will be examined on the content and the application of that information. You will also see the correlation between policies and SOPs in the workplace of these legislation documents. Now that we got all the reference material, the question is how to use these references. If you are using books, how am I going to look up the information? Because you have to manage your time and cannot spend a lot of time on looking up answers or looking for the most suitable reference source, you must know beforehand and exercise and practice beforehand um, on these books. It is important to find the index page to know what information is found in the specific reference source. If you again look at EM guidance as an example, when you need to look at a specific API or clinical information, you will use EM guidance. If you need information on scope of practice, you will go to board notices on regulations related to the practice of pharmacy. More references are not necessarily better. Too many references may sometimes be confusing. And do not bring references to the exam that you haven't used before. It may use up time to figure out how to use it and for what type of information. If you need to use these reference sources, rather come back to those questions later. If you are asked a question of something you haven't come across when preparing for the exam, rather do not answer the question and come back to it later. Proceed to questions that you know the answers to. You may use up time searching for reference sources, and you um, lose the opportunity for correct answers for those that you know. When you use notes from the training provider, it may not always be helpful. Make sure the content of those notes are still current and you know what information you can find in the notes and how to find the answers. So the what and how. You may use online references, but remember that we often struggle with the bandwidth during the exam and searches may take longer than normal. Rather download PDF documents beforehand. So again, you are not allowed to use Google search to answer your question or AI tools to generate answers. Your exam is going to be invigilated remotely and there will be record of every page that you clicked or opened. You may also visit the SAPC and SAPRA website, as I already mentioned. Familiarize yourself with the documents you can find on the website and the content relevant to the pharmacy assistant basic scope of practice. And as I said, download the PDFs. It will save some time. So as explained with the calculation tips, reading the question carefully to understand what is asked is so important. Often when we read the question, we get confused. Um, when we go to the answer options. It helps to block out the answers and think what would be the correct answer in this situation, and then open up and see which listed options is the correct answer. When evaluating answers provided one by one, um, take time to identify the statements which you are sure of. Then confirm the answers using the references to the statements that you are unsure of. If you cannot find an answer, leave the answer blank so that you can come back to it later. If you select an answer, you will not be able to come back to that question later on when time allows it. When you complete all questions and you come back to those that you skipped and you are still unsure after confirming with your references, please select an answer that seems correct. Do not leave questions open on your second round. The selected answers may be correct and you are not going to be penalized by negative marking for incorrect answers. Let's look at some of the terms within exam questions, such as true, correct, most appropriate. The examiner spends a lot of time in formulating the questions to ensure that the questions don't cause confusion. So words like true is correct. You need to look within the question, what is the correct answer to be selected from the four possible answers A, B, C, or D? Which one of the four statements may be true? The opposite also applies to questions with words like except, false, and incorrect. You will look for the incorrect answer in those options, or the statement from the four options that is false. And if we look at the word most appropriate, it means that perhaps some of the other options could kind of be correct, but the examiner is looking for the answer that is most correct, or which one of the options stands out as the ultimate correct answer. So sometimes those questions may be a bit trickier. Please be aware of that um, when you select your answer, that you select the most accurate. Time management is of the utmost importance when writing any exam. You have approximately 168 minutes to answer 84 multiple choice questions with 4 possible answers each. That means that you have 2 minutes for each general question. Compared to calculations, this is a bit less. Um, and you will need to work a little bit faster on the general questions. It is important that you are aware of the available time. Some shorter questions may take you less time to answer, but some questions may be more difficult or of a higher cognitive level, and evaluating of these may take a bit longer. It is thus important that you are conscious of time. Make sure that you wear a watch or that you keep track of the timer on the examination platform so that you can work at the adequate pace. Then again, very important, there's no negative marking, which means that you should not leave any questions blank. Take the most educated guess, and you can, when you revisit those questions, answer them. Don't leave anything open. Don't be hesitant to answer these. There's no risk if you answer incorrectly. So, in the same way that we went through examples of calculation questions earlier, we are also going to look at examples for general questions. There are 10 general questions, and I ask you to try to work a bit faster than 2 minutes per question. I think we may answer all the questions in about 6 to 10 minutes. We will now start. It is now 10:42. Let's give about 10 minutes, and then we can look at the answers. I think they will post the link also to those questions in the chat box. you will see that we now have all these answers already coming through. 130 of you already answered, and it took your average 5 minutes to answer these questions. So that is quite fast. It's a lot faster than 2 minutes a question. Um, so you will see when you answer these questions in the exam that you will have enough time if you manage your time throughout your exam. So it is actually possible to answer all these 84 questions in 168 minutes. So let's have a look at the first question. So if we go there, it says, what is the most correct term to use for stock that is at the end of its product life cycle and has not seen any sales or usage for a set period of time? So if we go to the first question, I think the word is. So again, there's that word most. So you must take care. Um, if we look at the possible answers, oh, let me see. Did, oh, did I miss question one? Or would I switch around? Let me see. So if we, oh, sorry, let me look at question one. Which of the following sectors is the first point of entry for patients seeking healthcare services in the public sector? So the first thing that we look there is the public sector. So make sure that you know the different sectors, private, public. And if we look at the first entry for healthcare, you will look at primary care. Most of you, 88% of you answered the correct answer there. So that is uh, the correct one. So with this question, you need to understand the different healthcare sectors. Um, We have different health facilities within these sectors. In the public sector, patients will have access to services starting with primary health care. And from there, they will be sent to community care centers and from there to district hospitals. This implies different levels of care, and you will need to start with a primary care facility as the entry point. There was a little bit of confusion about hospital. I see 20 answered that that will be your first point. But remember, you will only have access to hospital services in case of emergencies. And emergency were not mentioned in the question. So once again, this is a knowledge question. So a knowledge question, it's straightforward. You will look at the definitions or basic terms. So if we can go to the next question. So question 2 is the one with the most. So if we look at that question, you will see that it says, what is the most correct term to use for stock that is at the end of its product cycle and has not seen any sales or usage for a set period of time? So if we look at the possible answers, it is unusable stock, and that is a rather vague term, and that could actually apply to all these other three answers: damaged stock, expired stock, and obsolete stock, because they are all unusable. So that's where most is important so that you select the correct answer. So the majority of you say it's obsolete stock, and you are correct. Um, the confusion may be mostly with expired. Remember, expired stock is already past the date of expiry, and this was not mentioned in the question. So obsolete refers to unusable, unsold, outdated stock. So remember, we have three types of question: knowledge, application, and evaluation. If we look at this question, this is a pure definition of obsolete stock and relying on your knowledge. Thus, this is a knowledge question, and the answer may have come from your study notes and may be related to stock management in ELO 2. So when we go through these, I want you to think what reference material could be used to answer um, these questions. So just keep that in mind when we go through the questions. So if we look now at question 3, which of the following medicine can a pharmacist assistant basic assist in the manufacturing? So again, if we look at the exit level outcomes, this is from ELO3, manufacturing. So the setting is important, and then also the scope of a pharmacist assistant basic in that setting. So I specifically draw your attention in the manufacturing, there's the word non-sterile. Non-sterile is not mentioned in the question. So this question is not straightforward. You need to know the scope specifically to manufacturing and also which products need to be prepared in sterile conditions to be sterile and which products do not need to be sterile when administering to a patient. So if we look at all those answers, you will see that for 78 of you, 49% say suppositories. That is the correct answer. So if we look at the other three, eye drops, subcutaneous injections, and total parental nutrition, those are all sterile products. So eye drops need to be sterile because when you have a condition in the eyes, the defense against infection may be compromised. So the eye drops need to be sterile to prevent um, infection, causing infection. So eye drops is sterile, and total parenteral nutrition is also administered parenterally. So it is into a vein, so that needs to be sterile. So the only thing that's not sterile is a suppository. Because this is not a straightforward knowledge question, you need to apply knowledge on the scope in manufacturing setting and apply knowledge on the products. So this is a higher level of cognition and not plain knowledge. You were hereby asked to apply the knowledge that you already have. So if we can move to question number 4. Which of the following tasks can a pharmacist assistant basic do in a community pharmacy? So the options there is capture stock onto the inventory system, update the schedule 6, register, or is I again on the wrong one? Let me see, they changed it a bit when I prepared this. So that is on the bugle. Sorry, I apologize. Okay. Um, what is a tablet that must first be dissolved in water before swallowing, known as? So if we look at that question, there are four possible answers: buccal, modified release, sublingual, and effervescent. So what do we know um, about all those? If we look at buccal, it is a tablet that's dissolved in the buccal cavity and absorbed through the skin inside the cheek. Modified release means this is a tablet that is modified to be released in a certain area, or it is modified to be released um, um, with a certain time delay. So if we look at those, this is definitions that you are asking to apply. So you will need to have knowledge of dosage forms and identify these tablets. They are all solid dosage forms, and there are various types of dosage forms. Um, uh, and they are also, tablets is non-sterile. So if you look at those, the buccal modified sublingual is dissolved under the tongue. And then the only one that is correct is the effervescent one that you all, most of you have correct in this instance, 88% of you. So this is straightforward. It is a definition. So it is a um, knowledge question. So if we go to the following, which of the following tasks can a pharmacist assistant basic do in a community pharmacy? So very important here is the scope. You look at the scope, what you are a basic pharmacist, and you are now in a community pharmacy. So you know, with a new scope of practice, the basic pharmacist assistant is mostly involved in the inventory, in the stock. So you have little contact with patients, and definitely you have not, you cannot handle Schedule 6 and will not be able to update the Schedule 6 register. And it's very good for me to see that none of you selected that option. Um, Counsel a patient on how to take this medication. Why won't you, will a pharmacist assistant not be able to do this? Because counseling is part of the phases of dispensing, and the pharmacist assistant basic is not allowed to dispense. So this will be more in the scope of the pharmacist assistant post basic. Pharmacist assistant basics is also not allowed to perform blood glucose screening tests. You're not allowed to do any screening tests. So this is not so straightforward. So you have to apply your knowledge on the scope of practice, and then this is not direct words from this legislation. So this is of a higher cognitive level. So it most certainly will be more an application type of question. So if we move to question number 6, where is the site of administration for a dosage form that uses sublingual delivery? So you must know the different language that is used in the medical professions. So if we look at um, sublingual delivery, it will be under the tongue. So 148 of you had the correct answer there. So terms that will be related to the eyes will be ocular, to the lungs will be pulmonary, and to the skin will be transdermal. So if you look at those, remember the terms. It is good if you can have a list of these medical terms to help you to distinguish um, between those answers so that you can get to the correct answer. So if we move to question 7, which of the following statements would apply to a tablet that is packed in an amber bottle? So here, very important is the word amber. What does amber mean? So amber is that brownish or colored um, bottles that you get in a pharmacy. And why are some of these tablets packed in that amber bottle? So most of you, 82%, were correct. The tablet is then light sensitive, and that's why it is packed in an amber bottle. It's protecting that tablet from light. So if we look at all the others, you must ask yourself, how can I protect the tablet that is temperature sensitive? So temperature, you will maybe need to refrigerate those type of tablets. So you will look at temperature. You will look at how they need to be stored. If we look at humidity and oxidation, um, most likely you will add a desiccant to absorb any moisture to prevent oxidation, or that the tablet can be compromised with humidity. So the correct answer there is then the light sensitivity. Again, this is something that apply. You must know some of these um, terms and then apply it to the answer. So you need to know your definitions as well. If we look at question number 8, if stock is received on 30 July 2026 with an expiry date of 30 December 2026, that is then new stock, and there is already stock on the shelf with an expiry date of 30 August 2026, that's your current. Using FIFO, how should the stock be packed on the shelf? So important here is all the dates that you must remember, and then the, the acronym FIFO. So there is a few acronyms. Make yourself a list, and like also some things like SOP, all those that are normally used in the pharmacy, so that you can know the acronyms. So what is FIFO standing for? First expired, first out. And how should it be packed on the shelf? Those that first expired must be in front so that it can go out first. So if we look at that question, the new stock expires on 30 December and the current stock in August. So which of those expired the soonest? So those that are current. So they need to be packed in front so that they can be first out. So if you look at our answers, so your new stock um, will be packed behind your current stock. So that is very important, and 150 of you, 90% have the correct answer. So you won't pack your current stock behind your new stock. If it was FIFO, first in, first out, that would have been correct. So you need to know your acronyms. New stock back next to current stock? Yes, that is something that's not happening. So I'm glad to see no one selected that answer. And send new stock back to the supplier as short dated. So we must look at what they were looking for. They want to know how you are going to pack the stock. So that one is something that's not answering what is asked of you. So This is not something that you're going to find directly in your references. So this is more work experience that you will know the answer to. So if we go to the next question, um, which computer program is most suitable for report writing? There's again that word most. So all of them may be, you may use them, but which of those are the best, the one that will have all the right features, will save you time and energy, and give you a more clear report. So the answer there is Word. 77% said Word. So you can do it in PowerPoint, but it's not the preferred or the most appropriate one. Excel also, and so you will see that the most suitable is the key to this answer. If we move them to the last question there, what reference source can be consulted if the pharmacist assistant basic is unsure of what the specified cleaning product is to be used when cleaning equipment in a community pharmacy? So you must know, if you're in a pharmacy, which document or which reference will you go and fetch to clean equipment. So some of you, most of you, 82%, um, selected the correct answer. That's your standard operating procedures. So if you look at a good pharmacy practice, it is a guideline. So it will tell you you need to clean your equipment, but you won't find the cleaning product listed in the good pharmacy practice. So that is something that you will find in your standard operating procedure. So one of the words in that question, specified cleaning product. So it's a specific, it's like a specific cleaning product, and you will know that your standard operating procedures give you the precise recipe from how, with what, and when everything has to be happening in that SOP. So for the cleaning, it's more specific. You will find it in your standard operating procedures. Um, good manufacturing practices, that's the same as your good pharmacy practice. So manufacturing, that is also a guideline. So they will also not give you specifics. And when you're looking at the pharmacology textbook, they give you APIs, they give you um, clinical information and stuff like indication, contraindication, and also interactions, but they won't specify how to clean and with what to clean equipment. So you must go through all the answers and then what you know and what you experience in the workplace. So if your pharmacist or your supervisor tells you to do something, they will give you a SOP and say, this is how you're going to do it. And then you will select the specified cleaning product and you will clean those equipment. So that is also work experience that is coming in handy. So I hope this helped you a lot on how to answer these questions. So to conclude, there are few takeaways from these example questions. When you look at it, um, it will always refer to the pharmacist assistant basic scope of practice. So make sure you reflect on the current scope and know this inside out and not the old scope. And those of you that are already practicing in the pharmacy, make sure that you can differentiate between what you sometimes do or are allowed to do in practice and perhaps should not be doing to the to in this scope of practice. So it is critically important that you need to act and answer the questions within the scope that is published in the board notice. Look at the questions with the eye of a pharmacist assistant basic when you consider the different answers. Look at the context, the setting. Is it wholesale, manufacturing, community? And then it's really important that when you consider an answer. So these are just a few tips that I want you to apply when you're writing the practice exam and also the EISA. Good luck when preparing and writing the EISA. And now I hand over to the office, Ms. Morgana. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ina. I will take over now with the remote online examination. Okay, okay, so the focus now it will be on the remote online examination, and I just want to maybe reiterate or remind everyone that's online the purpose of this workshop. So we did the first part, which is helping you to prepare for the assessment in terms of content. And now I'm just going to take you through preparing now your equipment for the day of the examination. So before we go further, it's important to note that there is a criteria that is applied before you can qualify to write the ASAM. So there's different registration roles. Depending on the current role that you're on, then the criteria will apply. So if you're currently registered as a pharmacy assistant, learner basic, on the new on the new certificate, which is called the occupational certificate qualification, you must have completed a minimum of 6 months of training with a provider, and you must have successfully completed knowledge, practical, and work experience module. Before you apply, you should have received the statement of results from the provider. If you receive the statement, the provider will also upload that onto our system, so we'll be able to see on our side as well. For you to write the actual ASA, you must have written the practice ASA before, and then you will book online and pay the applicable fee. So if you're currently registered as a pharmacy assistant on the old qualification, the expectation is that you would have completed practice ASA and then book online and pay the applicable fee. If you are registered as a pharmacy assistant basic, the pharmacy student who has successfully completed their first year of study and intending to register as pharmacist and basic, the expectation or the criteria that you are currently registered in the role of a learner basic former BPharm student. You have completed 400 hours in an approved pharmacy under the direct personal supervision of a pharmacist. You have submitted at least one progress report. You have written the practice ASA and booked online and paid the applicable fee. All bookings are done online. So if you do struggle, you can communicate with the office to assist. However, everyone needs to go online and apply. So if you are registered with Pharmacy Council, you should have your P number. That will be used then to log in onto the secure site. You use your P number, ID number, or passport number, and your password. Once you have logged in, then on the dashboard, you can go under the ASA examination and book for the examination online. So if you're currently registered on any of the three roles, you will be able to access the bookings. However, if you are not registered or you are currently removed from the register, then you will not be able to access the booking online. So when you book online, whether it's a practice EISA or actual EISA, this is the screen that you will see. The only difference is that with the practice EISA, then there will not be a
Sorry, Ms.
fee.
Mahano,
Yes, ma'am.
your slides have disappeared. Can you please reshare?
Disappeared. Okay, I do apologize. Please confirm where you lost me, Natalie. Should I go back
Scott,
the beginning?
yes, from there,
Should I
that's
go?
fine.
Okay, no problem. Okay, just going back to the criteria. So there's three registration categories. So if you are currently registered as a learner basic under the occupational certificate, the requirement is that you should have completed all the modules with the provider and successfully or passed those modules. So that will be evident with the statement of results from the provider. You need to write the practice EISA and book online and pay the fee that's applicable. If you are registered as a qualified pharmacy assistant basic, the expectation or the qualifying criteria is for you to write the practice EISA, book online, and pay the fee. And if you are a pharmacy student who have passed the first year and intending to register as a pharmacy assistant basic, the criteria is that you are currently registered as a learner basic, former BPharm student. You have completed 400 hours in an approved pharmacy and under the direct personal supervision of a pharmacist. You've submitted at least one progress report. You have written practice EISA and you are booked online and paid the fee. So all bookings are done online. So you need to log in onto the SAPC website, and under your profile, then you'll go under the EISA examination, then click on the bookings. And this is the screen that you'll see, or the page that you'll see when you log in. So the page always looks the same for both the practice and the actual EISA. The only difference is that with the practice EISA, then there will not be a fee. So it's important to note, because we do get communication or queries, people asking, do we pay? Practice EISA is free, but the actual EISA, then there is a fee that's applicable. And you will need to select both the qualification and the general section. And this is just an example. When you book, then you will see the number of seats remaining per venue. So we have 4 different venues. It's home, that's your place of residence, or work, if you're working at your workplace. Either it could be a library or internet cafe, or if you opt to write at the SAPC offices, that is also an option. So this is how it looks like. Once you have booked, it will show the venue that you have selected before you are to proceed to booking for the EISA. So as I said, with practice EISA is free, but if you're booking for the EISA, then there is a fee applicable. I will tell you the different fees that are applicable. The 3 options to pay, you can either use a credit available on your account. So if you have paid in advance, you can use the available credit in your account, or you can use your card, or use the SID, which will direct you to internet banking. So once you have submitted your booking and the payment is successful, the record will appear pending as the picture below is depicted. And once payment has been verified on our side, a case will be created, and then you will be added onto the exam. If payment is declined, you will receive an SMS stating that the booking has been cancelled, and you have to resubmit your booking. And in terms of preparing for the examination, it's very important that you update your details on the SAPC website in advance. So if you have changed your cell phone, your email, you have to do so before the actual exam. And also, it's important to update your profile picture. That is important. And all the communication done by SAPC is through email and SMS. So that's why it's important that you should have the most updated details on the website. Okay, so these are the dates that are left for the practice EISA as well as the EISA for year 2026. So we've had or at the beginning of the year, we had 3 practice ASAs scheduled as well as 3 actual ASAs scheduled. So we're only left with 1 date. So the Tuesday next week will be the last practice ASA for the year, and then after that, then we will release the communication in terms of booking for the last ASA of the year, which will take place on the 3rd of November. It is important to note the dates in terms of booking. So we will open bookings on the 22nd of September for the actual ASA. Those bookings will close on the 6th of October. And then if you're unable to book within that period, we will have late bookings then from the 7th of October until the 20th of October. And this is where the fee differs. So if you book within the specified period, you pay the standard fee, but then if you book after that date, then a late fee will be applicable. It's important to note practice ASA, there's no fee. And then ASA, if you book within the specified period, is 737. But if you book during the late booking period, then the amount is 1,104 rands. Okay, so where do you find the ASA manual and practice paper? All these documents are available and accessible on the SAPC website. You don't need to log in. You can just go to the SAPC website, go to registered persons, and under registered persons, go to learner/student/trainee. And under there, go to assessment. Then you will have access to the manual, but not only the manual, all the documents applicable to ASA. So you will have access to the slides for this workshop. You will have access to past papers as well as model answers that are applicable to the ASA. So as I said, there's 4 possible assessment venues that you can choose from. And it is important that when you choose, whether you select home, work, or other, that you have access to all the equipment needed for the examination. So you might select home, but if you do not have a computer that is in good working order, so it might be advisable then to select another venue where you know you will have all the necessary equipment to be able to write. So when you select your venue, what you should keep at the back of your mind is that the place or the venue where you're writing, it must be a suitable venue, and there should be enough space for the device and your reference material. It's important to make sure that the area where you'll be writing, you'll be able to keep calm, and you will have your invigilator invigilating throughout, so you are able to communicate should you experience any difficulty during the examination. As mentioned before, ensure that you download all your electronic references before the examination. Do not waste time on the day of the exam now trying to download the examination. Ensure that you have all the equipment needed, whether it's paper to work out your calculation or the calculator. However, on the system that we use, you can also access the calculator, but it's important then to use the calculator or equipment that you have used before so that you don't struggle and waste time during the examination. So in terms of your devices or equipment needed for the examination, you need to have a laptop or a computer in working that in good working condition, and you also need to have a cell phone that has a QR code scanning capability. So your computer must have a camera or must be linked to a camera with video capability, and your internet connectivity, the minimum must be 3G. And before you write the examination test, that your connectivity is stable so that you do not struggle during the examination. We have browsers, 3 browsers that can work for the examination. So there's more than 3 browsers available, including Safari. However, the ones that are supported for the examination are only these 3. So you can use Google Chrome, Firefox, and Microsoft Edge. So if your computer uses Safari, please make sure that you download these 3 browsers before the day of the exam. So in terms of your profile picture, I did say it's important to make sure that you upload. So the criteria is that it must be a color image and it must be taken in the last 6 months. And only head and shoulders should be in the frame. This profile picture is used during the invigilation. So what we do is compare what we have on the system and the person that will be writing on the day of the exam, and then those two will be compared. So that's just an example of how it looks like, or where you should go if you want to update your profile picture. So you can log in, go to your personal profile, and whatever is or whatever picture is there, if you want to change it, then you can choose a new file and upload a new profile picture. So on the day of the examination, it's important to know where to find the examination, because one of the reason why some people do not complete the examination is because the first thing that they struggle with is where to find the examination. We do send communication a day or two before the examination with a link of where you can access the examination, but it's important to just navigate the website and know where to find it, even if you do not have that link. So you can go to a SAPC profile again. You don't need to log in. So in terms of the examination, to access the examination, you cannot and you will not be able to access it from your profile. So if you go and log in on this red button, the same way you do when you're doing your bookings or you want to check your documents, you will not be able to access the exam. You can only access the exam from the link that we would have given you, or if you log in, you don't log in, you go to the SAPC website, go to registered persons, learner, student or trainee, and from there go to assessment, and then under assessment you will get the date. So you will see it says here external integrated summative assessment. Then you will have the date of the examination. So for those that are writing next week, the date will be 11 August. Then you can click here to access the exam. Then that's when you can log in. So we do share communication, and it's very important that you read everything that is given to you or shared with you in preparation of the examination. The exam will start at 9 o'clock as indicated. However, it is important to log in by 8 o'clock. So should you have any challenges, then you are able to assist and your exam is not affected. So on the day of exam, 8 o'clock, you log in onto the website. You will receive a one-time PIN on your cell phone or email, and that one-time PIN then will be entered. Then you'll be able to access the declaration and then read the examination and then wait for the exam to start at 9 o'clock. So as indicated as a remote invigilation, you will have a live invigilation through video streaming, and there are images that will be taken of yourself during the examination. And then once you have started at 9, the examination then will end at 12:30. So in terms of logging into the platform or to the website, we have prepared a sample video just for you to understand what happens during the examination. Sorry, I hope it opens. It just gives you a picture of what happens on the day of the exam. Just not taking.
Ms. Makano, please restart the video and please reshare it and ensure that you're including the sound in the sharing.
Please confirm if you can hear before I continue, Natalie.
If you go to your Teams screen, and when you click on share, you need to, there's an include sound option at the top. You need to click on that before you play the video, please.
Okay, sorry about that, Natalie. So on the share, it should sound.
The SAP. So on the day of the examination, you will go to any browser of your choosing. This can be Chrome, Edge, Firefox, whichever browser you are comfortable with. For this demonstration, I am using Google Chrome because it's the one that I usually use, but I don't have any specific preference. All the three browsers work just the same. When you get the browser, you will search for the SAPC website, right? When you land onto the SAPC website, please ensure that you do not click red login button. Under normal circumstances, you come here for anything else, but for the purposes of EISA, please do not click on the red button. Instead, come here where it says registered persons. When you click on the registered persons, it will give you the different registers of people that we have. When you are on this page, you will see that after pharmacy student, there's learner, student, trainee. That is the role that you currently fall in. When you click on that one, you will see that it will give you the overview of the learner, the scope of practice of the learner, CPDs, applications, and what you are looking for is assessment. You will then click on assessment. When you get to assessment, it will give you all the information that you could possibly need for the EISA. So even right now, as you are prepping for the EISA, this is the page that you can go to. Here you will find the different EISA dates for basic, the different EISA dates for post-basic, right? Below that is all any other information that you could need in preparation for the EISA, including previous presentations. For the purpose of this particular training, when you get to assessment, please click on where it says click here for the date that aligns with the next upcoming EISA. So the next EISA is on the 4th of June, right? So you'll click where it says click here for the EISA of the 4th of June. When you click there, it will take you to a different page that will then have you inputting in your details. So you'll put in your PIN number, your ID number, your password, and then continue into the EISA.
Okay, now, once you are logged in, or if for any reason you try to log in, then you get a this error message where it says your time is incorrect. It's important to make sure whether you're writing in South Africa or outside of the country, your time for the purpose of EISA, your time zone must be set to Pretoria or just Pretoria Harare. That's the time that we are using. Because if it's any other time zone, then you will not be able to continue. This is the error message that you will get. And if you get an error message saying the live proctoring, it is not connected, you have to make sure that you are connected with the secondary equipment that will be your mobile phone, where you scan the QR code, but you will be directed. So as you log in, the system will say, will do the system checks. Then at the time when you need to scan, then you'll get the message then to scan. And because the examination starts at 9, even if you log in at 8, you have to wait until the examination has started. Should you try to start the examination before 9 o'clock, then you will get the error message that the exam hasn't started. So in terms of the format, this has been covered before, but it is important to note. So with the examination, you only see one question per page. So even though you will have 100 questions, you can't see multiple questions on the screen at one time. So you only get to see one question per page, and you cannot select which question you want to answer first because all the questions are randomized. So even if you're sitting next to your colleague who's writing the same assessment, their number one will not be your number one because the other questions are randomized. It is a timed examination. So if you start your examination at 9 o'clock, by 12:30, it will stop for everyone. So that's why it's important to make sure that you are set up and ready before 9 o'clock. You cannot revisit any questions that you have answered. However, you can still go back to those questions that you left unanswered. Okay, there's always a single best answer as has been covered before. So you have to make sure that you read question properly before selecting an answer. Okay, so there are violations that can happen during the examination as with any other examination, even if you're writing at a physical venue. So it's important to follow the rules as if there is an invigilator in front of you. You're not allowed to Google any answers, but you can use Google to get your resources like the Medicine Act and so forth, but you can't use Google as your reference material. So any action undertaken by any candidate to gain an unfair academic advantage will be considered a violation. So this may include, but not limited to, cheating or copying, as well as possession of unauthorized material. So in preparation for the examination, you can have your printed or electronic reference material. However, question papers are not considered reference material. So question papers are not allowed during the examination. So if you are found to have one during the exam, the invigilator will tell you to put it away. But should you continue, then that will be considered a violation. So wherever you're writing, make sure that it's not noisy, because if there's conversation happening around you or in the background, that might be considered as a violation. And you always have to make sure that your secondary phone is connected, because if it's not connected, then that could also be found to be a violation. If you're using more than one screen, that will also be a violation. So make sure you only use one screen, which the invigilator will have access to. And at any point during the examination, you should not have your microphone be muted, because that will also be considered a violation. So if you think about examination venue, this is the same. The only difference is that then the invigilation is done through the screen. So we have the frequently asked question. This is not an exhaustive list. There is a couple, but what we have looked at is what we get during the examination, and we try to come up then with solution for those questions. So in terms of where do you get help during the examination, we do have a chat function available on the examination platform. So you can type your question on the chat, and the invigilator will respond via the chat. But you can also make use of our WhatsApp. You can send the message directly to the invigilator on WhatsApp, and then wait for the response. Because WhatsApp is used by everyone that is writing on the day, the response time might be a bit longer. So we advise that you use the chat function on the exam platform, and then WhatsApp can be secondary, because then the waiting time in terms of response, it's a bit longer on the WhatsApp line. So what if the invigilator needs to contact you? Make sure that the phone with the number that is registered on the SAPC website is working, and that phone is fully charged and has data, because we can call you, but we can also send messages on WhatsApp. The invigilator may call or send the message on your cell phone that you have provided on the website. That is why it's important to make sure that you update your contact details to what is current. So what happens if you experience load shedding or loss of electricity during the examination? Please do keep calm. We have experience where people are crying. So the best thing is to keep calm. Beforehand, make sure that you check your load shedding schedule and make alternative plans. But should that happen during the examination, it's important to make sure that your laptop is always fully charged before the examination and you have an alternative Wi-Fi connection if you're using a fiber connection. And if you're unable to find or make use of an alternative connection or need to be connected to a power supply, please find an alternative location. But before you do that, notify the invigilator via WhatsApp. If load shedding occurs during the examination, whatever answer you have submitted will be saved. However, then when you change, you just have to communicate with your invigilator. And what happens to the questions that you've answered if you lose connection? As I said, all the answers that have been submitted are saved automatically. So you don't have to worry about losing that. So when you log in, you will only have access to those questions that you haven't answered as yet. And again, the questions will be randomized and they may be renumbered starting from 1. So if you see question number 1 again, it's not that your work is not saved, it's just that it's the way the questions are randomized. So what happens if the invigilator tells you that your cell phone is not connected? So you can click on the screen where your face normally is. So you can click there, then you have the option of a QR code that you will scan using your mobile phone so that you can connect. And what happens if you need to change venues? So if you decide to change venues before the day of the examination, you can just send the email to us and then we will change the venue. But then if it's during the examination, you have to communicate then. Example, if you have load shedding during the examination and you're closer to the SAPC offices, you just communicate with your invigilator so that they are aware that you're coming to the office. And what happens if you're disconnected and when you log back in, you get a pop-up message that the page was open before. So it's important to close all the browsers and log in again. And it is very important when choosing your venue to take these into consideration, that images are taken of you throughout the examination. So where you're writing, it is very important. Ensure that there's sufficient light. For example, that you close the curtains or blinds if you're sitting in front of the window, and you must test the lighting beforehand and take a selfie of yourself. Ensure that your camera is on. Dress appropriately as if you're writing at a physical venue. As I said, images will be taken as part of your permanent record. If the invigilator cannot see the images taken, they will phone you then to alert you. When will you receive the results after you've written the examination? And are you able to view your exam paper? And can the examination be remarked? So the answer to the first one is that if you're writing the practice EISA, the results are released within 2 days. However, if you're writing the EISA, the results will be released within 8 weeks. So the reason for this is that the examination results will be analyzed and reviewed, and this obviously takes time because there's different levels of checks that are done. You are able to apply for a review of your examination, but this you will inform us that you want to do so. We'll give you the application form which you will fill in, and there is a fee applicable to reviewing your examination. You will be allowed to review the exam questions and the answers that you have provided, and will also then indicate what the correct answer was. You may ask the facilitator for the reference that was used or steps that was followed in terms of calculation. You are permitted to take notes, however, you cannot get copies or take photos of the examination. You may not apply for a remark because the results have been checked and verified before, and that's why it takes so long, because it goes through a process of review by at different levels to make sure that whatever results are released, then they're correct. This it's important you can copy this, but we will also share this link which you use to test your equipment before the examination. It's important to test your equipment before the exam because we have a lot of people that are unable to write or start writing late because of equipment failure. So most of the time you find that the microphone is not working, the camera is not working, or your connection is not stable enough to sustain the examination. So this link helps you to check that everything is in working order and gives you time to choose an alternative exam venue than if your equipment is not in good working condition. And if we have questions, the communications team, you can start with those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. First question, do we need to register today as proof that we attended? Are you going to send us the results?
No, for the workshop, there's no need to register. So the register is taken from the survey. So you can just fill in the survey, and it will form part of the register for today.
When is the opening booking date?
Okay, the bookings for the practice EISA have opened and will close tomorrow. And in terms of the actual EISA, the bookings have not opened as yet. I did share, but I'm just going back to that. So in terms of the actual EISA, bookings will open on the 22nd of September.
Can we have our answers to see how we did?
Is it for the examples that were done earlier, Natalie, or is it for the exam?
I'm not sure. I think it's for the examples.
Or for the examples, I think maybe the question would have been posted before the facilitators went through the answers.
How do we use our calculators? Because last time I wrote a practice, the invigilator asked me, what am I doing? He will disqualify me while I was using my calculator.
Okay, so in terms of your secondary screen, which is your mobile phone, you need to put it in a way that we're able to see the computer as well as your hands and reference material. I think at the time maybe the invigilator couldn't see. Just make sure that it is visible. It's not like you're using a cell phone.
For learners writing at SAPC venue, are the specifications the same?
So the only thing you need to bring to SAPC offices is your mobile phone that has QR code scanning capability. We provide computer, we provide charger and mouse.
May you please explain in terms of the physical venue, SAPC venue?
Okay, SAPC venue, you only bring your cell phone that has the QR code scanning capability. But in terms of the computer, you will get the computer from us.
I am struggling to upload my profile picture on SAPC.
Okay, the person can send the email and we can just assist with how that is done.
Are we allowed to have our phones during the online exam since EM Guidance is an app?
You can open the EM guideline on the computer. So because the invigilator will need to see every reference material that you're using, but you can't use your cell phone, unfortunately.
Can I write the practice ASA before completing all my modules?
Yes, so the criteria that is applied for booking the actual ASA does not apply on the practice ASA. So you can, if you feel ready, you can book and write.
Do we need to complete the full 6 months before writing the practice ASA?
I think it's the same as the previous one. No, if you feel ready and you want to write the upcoming ASA, because it is a requirement that you do practice, you can write even before you are considered competent in terms of the modules. Natalie, did I lose it?
Sorry, so for next week's practice, the booking closes tomorrow.
Yes.
Can I bring a calculator if I'm writing at the SAPC venue?
Yes, you can bring it. But if you don't have one, then you can use the calculator that's available on the exam app.
We finished the last part of our module on the 13th of October and the ASA booking opens on the 6th. Can we still do the ASA?
Okay, so you might miss the first day. So the bookings for ASA opens on the 22nd of September and will close on the 6th of October. If we only finish outside of the 6th, then it means it will be a late booking, then you will pay the late booking fee.
Can I write the practice ASA while waiting for ASA results?
We're not going to stop you from writing, but there's no need to write practice ASA more than once. But if that's what you want to do, then you're more than welcome.
Can I bring my books of notes to the SAPC venue since it's open book?
Yes. I think this was covered by the facilitators. You can prepare any form of references for yourself. The only thing that is not allowed is the past papers.
The 11th of August 2026 practice ASA date is not there under assessments. Where do we access it in this case?
No, so if you're not seeing it under the assessment, so it means you're not registered in either of the three categories. Anyone that is registered as a learner basic under the occupational certificate, a qualified qualified basic, or a former BFAM registered under learner basic will have access to that. So if you can't see it, it's either you're not registered or maybe there's a problem with your registration, which you can communicate with us about.
Therefore, we may access our EM guidance, EML, etc. on our phones as long as you can see what I'm accessing on my phone, the physical venue, unless your laptops have EM guidance already downloaded.
No, we do not, but you can access the EM guidelines on the open web. You cannot use your phone for anything else but to connect for the exam. So you can use your phone. So if you have your app, you can just connect with your login details on the open web.
Can you write the actual ASA exam on the 3rd of November without writing the practice ASA on the 11th?
If you have written the practice ASA any other time, then you can. But if you have never written a practice ASA, you will not be able to book for the 3rd of November ASA.
Where do we pay the exam booking fee for the ASA?
You can pay the amount into the SAPC website using your P number as reference, and it will be allocated into your account. Or you can use your credit card or debit card to pay as you book, or you use SID, which will direct you onto your internet banking. So that's the three options available.
What is the pass mark for the exam?
The pass mark is 50% overall, and there is a sub minimum for both sections. So you need to get a sub minimum of 50 for the calculation, sub minimum of 50 for calculation, and the overall 50. So if you get 50% overall, but on one section you got 45, you will be unsuccessful.
Why did only some people receive an SMS and email to register for the practice EISA and some did not?
So if you have written practice EISA in the past, you wouldn't have received the communication. So this communication is for people that haven't written at all.
When are we writing the final EISA test?
Is the 3rd of November.
There are no further questions, Ms. Mogano.
Thank you so much. Just to...
Sorry, one last question just came in. Where can I
Okay.
get a taxi from Pretoria CBD to SAPC venue?
Okay. I'm not sure, but the other team members can assist. If you know. I come from the opposite side of town, so I'm not sure where you get the taxi to the office. But the office, if I simplified, it's just behind Union buildings. I hope that helps. Does that help, Natalie? Can I move to the survey?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this is the post-workshop survey. You can scan the QR code. Natalie, if you can just post the link on the chat as well. And if you want to follow SAPC on the WhatsApp channel, this is the QR code and the link, and Natalie will assist with that as well. Just a reminder that we have our 4th National Conference coming up between 11 and 13 October 2026 if you want to join. And thank you for making time to attend the session, and I hope it helps in preparation for the upcoming practice EISA and the actual EISA on the 3rd of November. Thank you very much, everyone. And I think we can adjourn the session. Thank you, team. Bye-bye.